My name is Helen Chen, and I work for the International Engagement Team in the New South Wales Department of Primary Industry. That's what we call DPI. I also have two colleagues, Cecilia Fu, our agribusiness representative to China based in Shanghai, and Anthony Jamie, manager, New South Wales Shellfish Program in our Food Authority team with me to host today's workshop. It is our pleasure to welcome you, and we would like to thank you for joining us today for this special presentation and conversation on oyster export opportunities in China and Singapore, our New South Wales oyster industry's target markets. Before the workshop starts, I would like to cover a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's workshop is being recorded. We will be able to share a link with you after the event is complete. We also invite your comments and questions. Please look at the chat box on the right-hand side of the bottom of your screen, and there will be a more, and when you click that more, that key, you will see some option, and the top option is chat box. If you think of questions for the speakers at any point, please type it in there, and we will select some questions to be discussed at the Q&A section. At this time, I would like to invite my director, Mr. Ian Sanders, to begin our section. Ian, please.
Thank you, Helen. Welcome to the New South Wales State Government Department of Primary Industries Oyster Export Market Workshop this afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking our partners, Australian Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment, Enterprise Singapore, Shanghai Jarawi Fine Food, the Seafood Company of Singapore, and James and Tyler for all your support to this workshop. Could also recognise all our oyster growers and industry stakeholders for taking the time out of your day to navigate the export opportunities with us. The New South Wales oyster aquaculture industry is Australia's largest producer of edible oysters, the fourth largest Australian aquaculture industry, and accounts for 73% of the value of New South Wales aquaculture production. It is our state's most valuable fishery. New South Wales oyster aquaculture includes the commercial cultivation of 3 species of edible premium oysters. These are the Sydney rock oyster, the native oyster, also known as the Angazi oyster, and the Pacific oyster. Here in New South Wales, we have the best place for oyster farming. The estuaries in New South Wales are completely unique for the native Sydney rock oyster and Angazi oyster that have grown here for many millions of years. Relying on a healthy estuarine environment, our oyster growers maintain vigilant surveillance of water quality under a world-class food safety program to ensure that quality, healthy products reach consumers. Our New South Wales oyster farmers have developed a streamlined supply chain to deliver oysters to Asian market customers within 30 hours of harvest, sometimes even quicker. This means that oysters which were growing in the wild rivers of New South Wales on a Monday morning can be presented for dinner service at a restaurant in Asia the next day, and we supply to the export market all year round. Historically, less than 1% of oyster production was exported. However, with the increase in our production, New South Wales oyster industry is now taking its first steps to explore the international market avenue. Thank you to our oyster industry and farmers. They've been in the front foot of innovation to improve oyster farming technology and systems and to enable our oyster production to be more efficient with higher yield. Successfully navigating export markets is an ever-changing business environment, and insight into consumer preference, market conditions and demand is essential in order to supply oysters that best meet consumer tastes and choices. However, 2020 has been a year of disruption, and travel restrictions have hindered us in obtaining first-hand market information, which we'd normally get through traditional market visits. Even though most countries are still expecting to be affected by the coronavirus pandemic, we've been seeing a surge of exports to Asian countries as the economy starts to recover in markets like China and Singapore. There's never been a greater need for connecting our oyster sector with international markets than now, and for linking our oyster farmers with 2 prominent importers, Link Zhang and Kenneth Chia. So we thank them for being with us today. There'll be many aspects covered during this workshop, and the presenters will share their market knowledge and expertise with you. We hope you find today's workshop informative and worthwhile. Having previously worked as an export advisor myself for 5 years in the central west of New South Wales and assisting export-ready companies, I fully understand going global activities take time, money, and collaborative networks. However, we know the investment in export has the potential extraordinary rates of return. At the New South Wales Government level, on the 17th of August this year, the Deputy Premier and Minister for Regional New South Wales, Industry and Trade, John Barilaro, launched the New South Wales Government's $12 million Going Global package, which includes grants of up to $10,000 for eligible businesses through the Export Assistance Grant Scheme. This program aims to assist our small and medium-sized businesses and regional communities across the state to showcase our local products and develop global export sales, and to help our export communities recover from the impacts of COVID-19, bushfires and drought on the international markets. My primary industries team and our New South Wales Export Advisor colleagues who are here with you today are ready to play our part to assist oyster growers achieving your export goals. But ultimately, it depends on our businesses. It means investing time and effort as there are challenges still to come and much to be done. It means being ahead of the curve, taking your first and small steps to explore the export avenue, joining online conversations about potential export markets like this one today. Expanding export opportunities for our oyster sector and our farmer community is more vital than ever. And we hope today's China and Singapore market workshop is an opportunity for us to start our export endeavour together. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ian, for that wonderful welcome remark. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Duncan Craig, Agriculture Councillor, Technical to China, the Australian Federal Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment, to brief us on Australian seafood market access to China. Duncan, please.
Okay, everyone, I hope you can hear me and most importantly, see my presentation. So first of all, Helen and Cecilia, I wish to thank you for the opportunity to talk to everyone today, providing an overview on navigating market access for Australian oysters to China. Now, if you are already exporting to other markets, some of this may be familiar to you, but if you are new to exports, it can certainly come across as very daunting, but there is a lot of help out there. Now, I will say straight up that I do only have 10 minutes to provide you with an overview. So I'll just be touching the surface, almost giving you a taste test of what to expect. So as background, as Helen mentioned, I am an agriculture counsellor based here in the Australian Embassy in Beijing. I'm one of 22 agriculture counsellors that is based across our key agriculture markets globally. As counsellors, our main job is to increase, improve and maintain market access for Australian agriculture exports, which account for approximately 2/3 of Australian farm production. Being here on the ground, we can also step in to assist in resolving any problems with Australian goods on entry to their destination. So just to set some opening remarks, the agriculture sector is significant for both China and Australia, and our respective governments and industries are committed to continued improvements in productivity and advancing trade. Consumers and retailers in both countries value quality produce, and this provides a range of export opportunities, with trade continuing to grow in both directions year on year. The China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, or CHAFTA, has also contributed to significant growth in exports through tariff reduction. Our free trade agreement, which is now 5 years old, continues to create opportunities, generate growth and increase employment in both countries. From the 1st of January last year, all Chinese products have entered Australia with zero tariffs, and the vast majority of Australian products enter China in the same way. And I've pointed out here in my slide as an example, the tariffs on oysters reduced from a base rate of 14% prior to CHAFTA down to 0 last year. Some of our biggest gains or wins from the FTA have been the trade in agriculture, with wine, beef, dairy and seafood all having seen double and triple digit growth. It's important to recognise, however, that while FTAs provide either a reduction or elimination in tariffs, they do not address all the issues that influence market access with trading partners. In particular, they do not address importing country requirements such as quarantine and inspection and biosecurity requirements, labelling or food safety requirements, and customs requirements. These requirements can influence both access for products to the market and the costs of doing business, which can in turn influence the uptake of FTAs such as CHAFTA. So in preparing for today's presentation, I pulled together some figures from the Chinese customs database on trade volumes of live oysters into China in 2019. Now, you will see from this that it is clear that the market is dominated by oysters from France and to a lesser degree, Ireland and New Zealand. Now, I'm always the optimist, and when I look at Australia's figure, it seems very low, but I think to me that says there is therefore a lot of opportunity to grow that market. Now, this data only covers live oysters. There is trade in chilled frozen oysters. However, this is much less, almost a tenth of the value. So in 2019, the total trade in chilled or frozen oysters was $3.6 million US. And even processed oyster products, canned, the trade is even less significant. So I thought that just gave a bit of a context to the scale of the market here in China. Now, what to do if you are considering exporting to China? Well, really, the Manual of Importing Country Requirements available on the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment's website should be your first port of call. So MICOR, as we call it, sets out the requirements that exporters and the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment must meet for products and commodities to be accepted for import into specific overseas countries. This database is updated when there is a change to importing country requirements. So meeting importing country requirements is only one part of the program. The other is exporters must also comply with requirements of Australia's Export Control Act and associated orders when exporting commodities from Australia. So again, for those growers that are already exporting product, you would have been registered and audited by the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, and have management systems in place that is documented and assured by our department prior to exporting product. If you are new to exporting or considering exporting, I've provided 2 email addresses there on the screen that I suggest you contact, and they are always happy to assist you in providing you with additional information. So for market access into China, I guess the agency that deals with the import and export of goods across the border is the General Administration of Customs of China, or GACC. So in 2017, the Chinese government announced a proposed restructure of government agencies. This was probably one of the most significant restructures of bureaucracy in over 50 years. And it wasn't really until mid-2018 that the shape of the ministries and the agencies was settled and formally announced. Most importantly at this time, it resulted in a merger of the quarantine and customs quarantine functions into GACC. So GACC has responsibility for both quarantine and customs functions. So you would have heard previously, you may have heard of AQSIQ, was the previous Chinese authority with responsibility for quarantine at the border. This now no longer exists. It's now GACC, a bit similar to how we used to have AQUIS in Australia. Now it is the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. So when it comes to market access, China has a number of quite stringent requirements that must be met prior to export. China has a list of species of seafood that are eligible for export. These include separate lists for live aquatic animals for food for human consumption, and a separate list for chilled or frozen products. So I call that dead seafood. On top of the eligible species list, to export, you must also be registered as an export establishment on the GACC website. Australia has over 400 registered establishments for the export of non-viable seafood, so chilled or frozen, and this is available on the GACC website. We also have submitted a list of all eligible exporters for live seafood to China. I should mention, I haven't provided the links to these lists on this slide. However, the links are included in that MyCore database. So the department provides quarterly establishment updates to GACC, where we have to notify GACC if there have been amendments to business names, addresses, or the addition of new products eligible for trade. So if you are an exporter, it is very important that you first check the list that is published by GACC, because until those changes that you may have requested are implemented and published, that will not be actioned by GACC at the border. Having registered lists, an eligible species list is one thing. What happens when your goods arrive at the border? So obviously at border arrival, there is the normal documentary requirements where you will have to submit import declarations and health certificates that would be issued by our department. There is likely to be a formal inspection and testing of product. And for oysters, that can include shellfish toxins and heavy metals. It is really critical to understand what the testing regimes and timeframes for border clearance, particularly for live product. And this has caused some challenges for exporters of live oysters in the past. As it's 2020, I could not go without saying something about COVID-related impacts. So I think what COVID has demonstrated is that things, not just in China, but globally, can change rapidly. So for the seafood sector in particular, COVID did result in a rapid drop in demand, both due to consumer demand, but also disruptions to supply chains. But as Ian mentioned, things are starting to improve here in China, and trade is starting to return to something resembling normal. However, in June this year, there were some outbreaks of COVID in China, in Beijing and Dalian, that were linked to either wholesale markets or manufacturers of seafood products. This resulted in increased concern by the Chinese authorities around potential role of particularly chilled product in the transmission as a vehicle for transmission of COVID, and led to changes occurring at the border in terms of border clearance very quickly. And some of you that are in the export game may have seen this through the request from importers for exporters to provide various forms of additional declarations. However, the Chinese authorities have also been testing product at the border for COVID, or the virus that causes COVID, both in product and the environment. What has this meant in terms of the supply chain? I think it would be fair to say it has been patchy and variable depending on which port products have arrived, but also around the history or knowledge of the importer as well. There are continued constraints in the air freight sector. Some of you may be aware of the government support provided in Australia through the International Freight Assistance Mechanism, which is assisting exporters in facilitating air freight to get product to markets as quickly as possible. I think in summarising what is a very complex situation, my one tip for everyone that is considering exporting is really to partner with an experienced importer. And this is critical in navigating many of these complex requirements. So on that, I would finish, and I have provided some additional links both to information available on our department website for new exporters or new seafood exporters, and also an industry body called the Seafood Trade Advisory Group, which is there to assist industry and provide guidance to government in terms of prioritising new market access requests. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions either now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan, for sharing your insight on the market access to China. Moving right along, it is now my pleasure to introduce our first international guest speaker, Link Zhang, Retail Channel Sales Supervisor from Jiafu Fine Food. Link studied in Ireland and has extensive global sourcing experience in agribusiness food and an expert in seafood import and distribution. His current role in supervising retail sales in Jiafu Fine Food. Please welcome Link.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
Link, please. Yeah,
let me try it here. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I just very happy to have me here and talk to everybody, and I will have like a very quick introduce to my company. Okay, my company established in 2010, which will be the 10 years anniversary in this year. So our very first business is oysters, because our founders and studying in France. And when he went back, he don't know what to do. So just want to try this oyster. So in the beginning, we started with $20 per flight and to do the business. So, but within these 10 years, we have the oysters. We reach a lot of high-end supermarket, restaurant, and Michelin restaurant. This kind of a HoReCa and the retail channel. So allowed us to extend our products like a catalog. So as you see now, we are the I think we are the biggest oysters importers now in China, which is about like 30% according to the customs data. 30% about the importation of whole China. And then you can see this is like some brand we are doing for the oysters, which you can see only Moana is come from New Zealand, and also we have the Irish oysters and other country oysters, but only these four were the exclusive, so we will show on our PPT. And also we are doing some frozen, high-end frozen seafood with 5DO and Quilly, and they have like solar lobsters, and like a New Zealand scampi and the canaminera from Spanish. This kind of unique and special frozen seafood. And then we also have this kind of what we can say is less vegetables like caviar, like hujie, which is the duck livers from France. Also some truffle products, and also the high-end cheese, including this French. Normally, we only do the French cheese now because we are based, like our background is more French line and the Spanish line. And then also you can see we are doing some top brand like Cinco Rodas, which is Iberico ham, and Castro, and the best dish is like a dry sausage from France, also like some sausage from Spain. And then for the like black pork from like also from Spain, and also Timana is the lamb from New Zealand, I think is also high-end brand. And this is some dry good and like herbs and sugars. And for now, my companies, we are not only like for the like sell and buy, we have this kind of a lot of service. Firstly, we have very professional purchasing team. They are sourcing, also they are helping our suppliers to do the documents and also check the documents and talk to the customers. Actually, our customer current like effect is very good. Like we can only take about 4 or 6 hours when the oyster arrive. We can have the oysters in our warehouse, and now our supply chain is I think is cover the whole China, including frozen and normal temperature and also chilled. For now, we have really very good marketing department. We are doing like events. We take the pictures and we make the video for the nice brand and suppliers. Also our clients, and also do some events, offline events and online events. Also, because our structure of like our products, we need a pretty professional sales, because we need more like knowledge about the products, and we need to think more about how our clients do the business, think about how they calculate their cost, how they use our products to make dishes. And our delivery is like 24 hours. We have a 24 hours like a customer service. We always like answer our order in the first time. And also we got a tailor-made customer service because in this fine food industry, a lot of clients got their special needs or special orders. So we need to help them to create some, like not only a big list, but we need to do the like only the plan for these customers. And now we have like a 3 branch. Headquarters is based in Shanghai, and but which we are not based in the wholesale market, so you cannot see the water tank in our company. We don't really do the tank things. Then we also have the Beijing office and the Shenzhen office, and cover the north and the south. And we are also planning to maybe establish another branch in Chengdu or Chongqing, cover the west side, but it's on planning. Okay. So this is our like one of the major channel is the food service, and we have lots of like more than 2,000 like restaurants and hotels like around China. Also, for now you can see this picture is my department. We're working with Olay, City Super, Hema, and Metro. And this is one oyster stand in Hema, in the Alibaba headquarters. And then we got 2 restaurants. So normally some chef after work, they would come to to our company's restaurant. We can talk about our products and the plan. So this is basically very quick introduce to my company. And then I will share another one. How to? So can everybody see this new PPT?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. So now I started my presentation about this workshop. So you can see this is according to my company's like data. So at this time, 70% of our sales is Pacific oysters, because I think every farmer knows Pacific oysters got a lower, there's like mortality rate and easy to farm and grow fast and it's big. So now we have 2 or 3 flights per week from Paris to Shanghai. And for other region, now we are importing like Canadian oysters and New Zealand oysters and also Irish oysters. We now stop import like American oysters because the trading war between our 2 countries, the customs duty is too high from America, so we stop. Then the volume of our company, you can see, is about 3 or 5 tons like per flight. At the peak time, such as the Christmas or Chinese New Year, or maybe not Chinese New Year, or maybe like this summer, because Chinese people still like the eat chill oysters during the summertime. So although the quantity in summer is not really stable, but still we have a very big like sales. So the peak time will be 10 tons like per flight. And also you can see 70% in my company is coming from France. And now this is my company data. 70% is HoReCa, because it's a barrel between products to the customer, because a lot of people don't know how to shuck the oysters. So if you go to the restaurant and you can have the oysters and the people can serve you, open the oysters for you. But like our offline, we will maybe give the knife for free. We'll just like send some flyers or maybe put a video on the app and teach people how to shuck the oysters. But still the service is not as good as the HoReCa. So offline, like if you want to sell like oysters in the restaurant, in the retail channel, it's some barrels. So this is some things like in stop us to really make a very big sales in the retail channel. And this is the difference, difference between different regions. Firstly, you can see the oysters from European, they are grading oysters based on the weight. So you can see number 0 to number 4. But which the biggest sale is like focus on number 1 and the number 2. But within these years, and we found the number 4 or number 3, the small oysters, some like oysters, like some restaurants and some clients, they have free flow buffet. They're all prefer number 4. But you can see the Canadian and the New Zealand, they're all grading. I believe Australia also oysters also grading, like it depends on the length. Also the packing, you can see is the wooden box from France and Ireland. But in New Zealand, they are using the poly box, and in Canadian, they are just using a cotton box. The packing, and also they are packing a lot. Normally the packing from France will be like 1 dozen, 2 dozen, and 4 dozen or 8 dozen. But from New Zealand and Canadian, they'll put like 12 dozen or 24 dozen in a poly box or a cotton box, which is super big. And also the packing is not really good enough, so we have to repack it, because no restaurant want to buy like 12 dozen or 24 dozen at a time. So this is the difference between the European oysters and from another region. And also depends, because normally like our suppliers or the government agencies, they got the budget. Also if we got exclusive agency for brand, and we can also invest something about marketing. Firstly, you can see on the left side, we will do a very nice flyers and put the products in our very nice catalog, and then we can take very nice pictures. So you can see this is some promotion pictures about the French oysters, Irish oysters, and Moana from New Zealand. Also this kind of Minero. And also you can see the right side. This guy is the champion from France. Is the champion now, they can shuck oysters very quickly, and they can do a lot of a fancy way, shuck the oysters from the back or blind shuck the oyster, something like this. We also will make some Charlie. You can see the box on the right side. We can make oyster Charlies and do the catering for our customers. So this is not all, but you can see now we are doing a lot of marketing in order to promote the oysters to not only our clients, because finally we want to, the real clients they will consume the oysters. So we need to teach people how to taste and how to use and what's the like the knowledge about oysters. You can see now because this just like coronavirus situations, the market size I believe is dropping about 20 to 40%. This is based about the data about in June or July, because at that time still like COVID-19 things is still seriously. But honestly, depends on these days. I feel like our F&B channel is recovered, and the restaurants is like follow people, customers going back. But from the retail, like Duncan said, we have found the COVID-19 virus on the packing of the some salmons and also vanilla mice. So this is like it makes Chinese people a little bit fear to eat imported products, and also the chilled, the fresh, like the chilled salmon and this kind of oysters. So it dropped about at least at my channel, from the retail channel, we dropped about like 60%, because in the retail people don't really want to go to the restaurant and see the oysters display publicly, openly, everybody can touch. It feels like it's not really clean, so that's why they fear to really consume the oysters now in retail. But the F&B now is fully recovered, I think. And also during this time, our flights become really unstable, and logistic fee is double or triple the price about the logistic fee. Normally, our flight is arrival in the morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning. Then we can only take like 4 hours or 5 hours. We will have the oysters by the noon of the day. Then we deliver the oysters in the afternoon to our clients. So it's really fast and really fresh. But now, 1 or 2 of our flight is changed to the the night shift. So we will have the oysters maybe during the midnight. So we can only deliver the oysters in the like the day after arrival. So which we lost some freshness. This is the also will rise the like material rate if we wait for too long time. Now, and also the competing, and about Australian oysters, I have to say now at least 8 to 10 countries now exporting their oysters. And although they're all Pacific oysters, but at least there's more than 50 brands. So Chinese people at this time, and still a lot of clients is now really professional. They're thinking brand is species. They don't really recognize difference about the Pacific oysters, rock oysters, or flat oysters. So they always go to the client, the restaurant said, I want to do what kind of species you have. So we are still teaching the people, but like I said, now for the brand, we at least have 50 brands. So to the customers, they have 50 species they can really choose, right? So my suggestion for now at these oysters from the Australian oysters, firstly, you have to really take care about your image about healthy, fresh, and the virus free. Some of my the suppliers, they do the COVID-19 test in their farm and equipment, sending us this report, and we send to our like clients to let them see we're super like fresh. Also now we also do the COVID test in China of every like delivery of our stock. So in order to convince the people our products is healthy and virus free. And also if you really want to get into the market, still the products is the key. If you don't really have the very good the products, no matter like what kind of story we're telling to our clients, in the end, they don't like your food and they won't come back and buy it again. So we need firstly, we need the farm have to be a stable supply. It's not like we ask for like 500 kilos like this flight. Next time, maybe next week, I order another 10. You said, okay, we don't really have because of, I don't know what kind of reason. Maybe your truck is broken. Maybe the weather is not okay. This is not a good thing because we need to continue to supply. If we stop 1 or 2, 3, and even the restaurant or the supermarket, they really feel annoying because they also want to keep push one thing, so they don't want to stop. And also the quantity, like I said, the quantity is most important things. For example, I know some oysters is fat, some oysters is skinny, but it depends on the price. But once we set the price and the quantity, your quality have to be stable, because people know you are skinny oysters, they accept the price, it's okay. But then next flight, you got like very fat oysters. Then another flight become very skinny. People will feel like they will complain, said, why last time I buy a super good product, now your quality is dropped, right? So you have to control your quality. And as I know, the supplier working with us from France, their quality control is doing a really good job. Even during the summertime, their triploid oil, the triploid or the oysters, the meat is always like it's plump. Oh, maybe this is a not skinny one, but it's all the same. They never change. Then the customer like the cost of performance. And normally in the beginning, and I think the oyster is super expensive these days in the restaurant and in retail. But now, because the competing, because of the the economic dropping, people don't really afford like a super expensive oyster. So not only us and also our suppliers, we have to like reduce our margin to try to keep the marketing. Although our cost is rising, like I said, the content, the logistic fee is rising, the mortality is dropping, and we do extra tests and also need the inspection. These kind of things, our costs are rising. But we still cannot really sell a super expensive things now. And also you can see the unique products. And see the right one, the right side one. This is Austral Regal from France. They choose the very good shape oysters. Then they put a golden flake on that. And this is kind of unique. It can grab people's eyes. Also, we got some like pink oysters from France. Also, we have the flat oysters, which is the world famous ballon oysters from like France. This cannot be sold very big like quantity, but this is a very good the image. For example, this Austral Regal, we got our normal Austral Regal because we have this golden Austral Regal. This brand in a lot of customers like an opinion, this is a high-end oysters, quality is good. So our normal Austral Regal sells super good. And this Austral Regal, they make their brand super nice, right? And also, in the end, I have to say, we need a very strong marketing support. So in this end, the marketing need not only us, I think the suppliers you have to plan, you have to have the budget to really promote your brand in China if you really take your brand really seriously. And also, I don't know the agency if you guys have budget too, because I work with Moana and also the trading agency of New Zealand very well during these summer times. We have the Moana month, and we promote the Moana to all of our clients. Not only the like a cheaper price, and we also give them like different POSM. And we have hired the extra people going into their restaurant to help them to serve the clients. So all of this, if you really want to have like stable business and the long-term business, you have to treat your brand and your products really seriously, and you have to have the budget. And even in my company, you're not only just like, because we already have like 20 to 30 brands. If we choose suppliers from Australia, we also need some guys have the like very good taste, and you can make a very good marketing idea and the POSM, and you have budget to work with us. Or maybe we'll stick in our current project. We won't change. We won't add the new suppliers because it's not necessary. It's too difficult for us if only just fighting in China. Nobody support us. So that's, I think, is all what I want to share. And maybe later, if you guys have more questions, maybe I can answer you, can give you more detailed things, okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ling, for sharing your comprehensive knowledge in China's oyster market. Now, I would like to introduce our second international guest speaker, Kenneth Chia. Kenneth is the Managing Director of the seafood company, PTE Limited, one of the major seafood import and distribution companies in Singapore. Kenneth is also the Vice President of the Seafood Industry Association in Singapore, which is the key body representing Singapore's seafood processing, manufacturing, and trading companies. Please join me in welcoming Kenneth to present on import oyster consumption in Singapore. Kenneth, please.
Hi, very good afternoon to everyone. Okay, can everyone see the slides? Okay,
Yes,
yeah. All right, so okay, I will be sharing a bit more about what our Singapore market demand for oysters are like. Today, I'll just share a bit on my company, on what we do, and thereafter, I will share a bit more on what the industry wants.
Thanks, Jackie.
All right. Okay, so my company, the seafood company, we have incorporated since 2005. And since we are now one of the major distributors, importers and distributors in Singapore and regionally as well. So we cover markets like Vietnam, Myanmar, Malaysia as well. All right, so within our group, we have 4 companies. So the core company is the seafood company. So that's where the major imports and distribution activities are ongoing. Then we have another company called Food Buddies. That's more of like a one-stop shop, okay, doing logistics. Then we have our manufacturing arm. We focus on sea cucumber and cuttlefish. Then we do farming as well. So we have fish farms in Singapore. We are doing soft shell crab farming in Indonesia as well. And as of now, we are starting our operations in India. All right, so these are the countries that we trade with. All right. So we also do brand distribution in Singapore and in Southeast Asia as well. So these are some of the brands that we are doing. For Australia, we're working with a company called Ocean Grown Abalone. So they are focused on green lips. Right, so I think I'll skip all this. This is more for Food Buddies. This is our sea cucumber manufacturing. Yeah, sea cucumber. Right, our local farms, still very old school. Our soft shell crab farms. We're exporting this to Australia as well, actually. Okay, just to highlight a bit, I mean, since the last few years, we've been doing this oysters from Japan. It's actually frozen. They only process them only April to May every year. And they use proton freezing. So upon thawing, they are able to maintain the quality for about 2 to 3 hours. And the quality is really, I would say, just as good as the live ones, right? Okay, so I will share a bit more on a broad sense rather than just from my company's point of view. So in Singapore, our importation authority is actually, we call it Singapore Food Agency. So the website is here. At the moment, we only allow oyster imports only from countries which meets the sanitation program. So as of now, it was 11 countries, but we reduced it down to 9. All right, so each and every consignment must come with a health certificate, and there will be a 100% check. So for exporters, for companies which have successfully exported into Singapore, the subsequent shipments, they will allow for collection first, and then they will do, and we can continue to do our sales, but they will still be doing their lab tests. If there's any issues, they will indeed call for recall. Right, so as far as I remember, I don't remember hearing Australia having such an issue before. Okay, just some numbers involving Singapore. So the import volume in 2019, live oysters, 725 tons. Yes, our government goes by tonnage. Frozen oysters, meat and whole, about 400 tons. The total oyster import value is around 27 million. So the import volume from the highest to the lowest by rank, okay? Highest volume being France, then Canada, Ireland, USA, and finally Australia. All right, so yeah, you guys got work to do. Okay, so I'll just share very briefly the local preferences. So in Singapore, we are still at a stage whereby, if we're talking about volume, the main volume drivers are still at the hotel buffets, and in the Western and seafood bars and restaurants, whereby the demand is actually normally smaller sizes, whereby they can afford to do promotions like 1 for 1 or do shooters or free flow oysters. So for distributors like us, this is normally how we try to get the volume, right? So generally speaking, okay, our market prefers shells meat which looks full, meaty and flavorful. So there are some certain oysters which is actually very, very classy. The taste is actually a bit mild. Surprisingly, our market don't prefer them, okay, given the price. All right, and just as the previous company has shared, okay, quality consistency is key. All right, so this is, I think, one of the most important thing, especially if we are trying to market a certain brand, and of course, marketing support. And okay, so one of the weird thing about Singapore market is food safety records. As far as our consumers or the restaurants are concerned, they don't ask, hey, how safe is your food? Because how should I put it correctly? So our restaurants and our end consumers actually trust our government regulators fully in terms of ensuring that food that is being imported into Singapore are safe. So I mean, the thing about sharing about food safety is not exactly a huge draw for me, like as an importer, towards my clients. It's a given understanding that there shouldn't be any problem. All right, just for information for you guys. All right, some of the common oysters sold in Singapore, just to share a bit, the Irish oysters, price range, okay, because I remember people were asking about it. So these are the distribution price, all right? It's not the import price, all right? So these are in Singapore dollars. So for example, Irish oysters, similar to Fin Declare, we're looking at the 2 to 3 inch actually. Price range sold per piece are ranging around 75 to 90 cents depending on the season. Okay, so anyway, Sing dollar and Aussie dollar are about the same. I think Sing dollar is slightly stronger at the moment. Okay, USA oysters. Recently, USA oysters prices dropped considerably. I think because of China. Canadian oysters, these are the bigger ones, so the prices are higher. Okay, so the only Australian oysters that Singaporeans are used to seeing is actually the Tasmanian ones. I don't have a price with me now, sorry. So once again, the Japanese ones. So the Japanese ones, we are importing frozen. It's sold by the kilos, sizes 6 to 8 to 13 to 20 pieces per kilo. And we're selling it by kilos, all right? All right, that's all. Okay, so anyway, I've listed a website here. This is the website to our association. It has a full list of all the importers. So if you want to, farmers, companies can engage them directly as well. All right, you can look for me and look for them as well. All right, that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth, for your valuable insights on the Singapore's oyster market. Next, we have a special guest, James Hutchison, partner James and Taylor. James has been studying and working with China for the past 15 years, and together with his business partner, Taylor Ye, they started an end-to-end supply chain company that can take product from Australian farm to Chinese table in under 72 hours. The James Taylor team assists Australian agribusiness brands enter the China market with their integrated supply chain services. They have previously conducted oyster tasting events and business matching services in China for a New South Wales oyster brand 2 years ago. Let's get some of James' insights into Australian oyster export supply chain. James, please.
Sure thing. Excellent. Thanks for the lovely introduction, Helen. And I'm glad to be here and share my experience here. I'm obviously an Australian. I'm sitting here in Sydney. Lovely hot day here. But I was really interested in listening into Kenneth and both Lynn speak. I actually know Lynn quite well. We've done a few oyster tastings together in China. And I think for everyone, you know, both Kenneth and Lynn said some really important things. You know, consistency was particularly important. The other thing that Lynn said was, and we sort of failed to think about it in Australia, is competition. You know, he said that there's sort of 8 to 10 countries, you know, all competing for market share in China, and might be 50 brands. So whilst, you know, Chinese, there's an oyster boom going on in China at the moment, there is a lot of competition. So that's why you have to be really smart about how you approach it. So I know it's, you know, late in the afternoon for a lot of you, and it's towards the end of this presentation. So, but what I want to do is sort of take you on a bit of a journey to China and put yourself into the shoes of the Chinese consumer. I think that's going to be really important for you to really understand really what Kenneth has been talking about and Lynn's been talking about, and then some things about, get you thinking about how you can sort of approach the China market as well as the Singaporean market. I'm sure a lot of things sort of translate into that market too. So there's really sort of two things that I want to talk to you about today. Firstly is the importance of supply chain and, you know, putting yourself in those shoes of the Chinese consumer. And then secondly, some key steps, some simple steps to sort of get started on your export journey. So, like I said, travel back 15 years ago, Tyler, my business partner, and I were both in China selling premium Australian wine. And at that point, the whole wine world descended on China at the same time. It wasn't just Australia that knew that there was a fresh, you know, there was a wine boom coming into China. The whole world did. And there was an incredible statistic at the time that a bottle of Penfolds Grange was being reused up to, you know, between 40 and 50 times, because it was incredibly competitive. And whilst there was a lot of money made and some brands really emerged and succeeded, as Tyler and I always say, for every winner, there are 99 losers. So you've got to be really aware of that moving into the market. I'm not trying to say that everyone's going to lose, but you just got to approach it. And I think Ian Sanders mentioned it earlier before that you've got to be really selective about who you work with, approaching the Chinese market and be realistic about it. So now fast forward to today. There is certainly a huge increase in consumption in China of imported oysters. But in the same comparison, exactly what Lynn talking about is incredibly competitive. And what happens when it's really competitive? There's some interesting sort of behaviour goes on. And so as I said before, a bottle of Penfolds Grange being reused 40 to 50 times. Lynn, I'm sure you've seen this before, but you know, an oyster shell being consumed in food service. They're taking it out back, the waiters, scrubbing the shell, then filling it up with some, you know, tinned or canned oysters. So these are the sort of things you've got to be aware of. And this is, like I said before, really starting to get yourself into the mind of the Chinese consumer. So what are some people sort of doing about it? Well, I'm sure you've probably been to a Chinese restaurant and you buy a crab or a fish or anything, and they bring out the fish. Here it is. And, you know, in Australia and what Kenneth was saying, like, we just trust that, you know, the regulators are doing the right thing. We trust the food is okay. But in China, it's not just about the theatre. Yes, that's important, but actually showcasing the live food serves a very important purpose. That is a live fish. I'm not getting some different type of fish. It's not dead. And it's all about trust. And so what's really interesting, I know, you know, well, how many years ago was it? 10, 15, 20 years ago, Australians didn't even know about the whole shucked oyster, you know, live shucking oyster trend. Just happy to get an oyster unshucked and washed and with no of the salty brine. In China, they don't have that issue. There's no education required about the benefits of having unshucked oysters, because they're actually serving this trust issue. They're going to shuck it in front of you so that you know that the oyster is in fresh. And so Lynn actually pointed on a really important point, is when you go into food service, when you know, there's a waiter there to shuck it in front of you. But if you are going to retail, there is no unshucked oysters to buy in retail. They are shucked, And then that creates the challenge of, you know, for the consumer who's, you know, new to oysters, or, I mean, even people who are old to oysters still have no idea how to shuck. So there is some challenges there by going to retail. So no one really wants to buy an unshucked oyster because they don't know where it's come from. So what are some people doing about it? This whole issue of trust. This is a great Australian company. I don't know if anyone's heard about it. It's called Lava. They're QR codes, and it kind of creates a digital fingerprint, so you can scan it and see where your products come from. So we're really talking about digital supply chains here. But as you know, with any QR code or Lava fingerprints and things like that, can tell the story well. However, they are limited because it's on the packaging. So not actually on the food itself. You can always peel off that sticker or whatever. So it serves a purpose up until a point. But what's really interesting, and you know, Lynn will have seen this many times, I'm sure you've heard about, but Gelato. They have established an amazing brand in China, but then they got going, and Lynn and GRA were one of the companies that really helped get Gelato going in China. But a couple of years after that, they found out that there was fake gelato in the market. So they've actually come up with a very innovative strategy to get around that, and they engrave the G on, as you can see in these pictures, on the shell using their own laser pointer. So really important. So all of this is, you know, if you think back, now I'm getting a bit scientific here, but back to your science days of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, that pyramid, and you've got self-actualization, a couple of things at the top. Then down the bottom, you've got basically, if I eat this, am I going to die? Do I trust it? We in Australia are fortunate, and Kenneth said, you know, in Singapore are fortunate. We don't have to exist in this bottom layer. We just trust what we're eating is safe. Whereas, you know, in China, and, you know, Lynn can attest to this, trust is a huge issue. So thinking about ways to overcome that, you don't have to be as, you know, sophisticated as Gelato with the laser engraved logos, but having supply chains that you can trust. So people put their trust in supply chains, in the distributors, in the importers, and that's how you can sort of help. So part two, I hope that sort of helps put in, you know, context of supply chain and the importance of trust for the Chinese consumer. So part two, getting started with export. I think the key thing, if you are thinking about going to China or to Singapore, if you want to start exporting, you've got to hit a minimum target of 100 kilos per uplift, so per air freight. It's too expensive otherwise, and I don't think people really bother with it otherwise. So you've got to be committed to sending weekly shipments of 100 kilos up into these export markets every week, even if you're losing money, even if they aren't selling through. And that's really important. Both Kenneth and Lynn said it, consistency is key. You can't launch into a market and then not have stock the next day or the next week. It's got to be, once you launch, you've just got to keep on going. So you've got to work out ways, you know, whether it's the buffet or maybe you're, you know, providing a discount or whatever it is to hit that critical mass, which is 100 kilos. Once you hit that 100 kilos, you're away and you can grow from there. And the next target after that is 1 ton. And then you're really talking then, because you can get a whole air freight container, and that's when the logistics price efficiencies start to kick in. So keep those two targets in mind. Next one, this might be new to some people, might be very old news to other people, but understanding your Incoterms is really important. And Incoterms is really, at what point along the supply chain do you hand over title to the buyer? Often handing over title and handing over responsibility happens at the same place, but sometimes that can change. So for instance, you know, when your oysters are delivered to the airport in Sydney or Melbourne, maybe at that point, the Chinese importer or the buyer takes title over the product, so they own it. However, it's still your responsibility to ensure that those oysters turn up in in good condition. If they don't, then you're liable, and you can get claims and things like that for that. So understand your Incoterms, and all your payment terms and how you work with your importer will work around that. And often the importer will sort of generally dictate, or you can dictate, but generally they'll sort of recommend what they usually do. Next, we've talked about this, Kenneth and Lynn have talked about it, I'm just going to hammer it home again. Consistency is more important than perfect quality. So, of course, everyone's excited, really happy to have fantastic quality oysters. But if you can't hit perfect quality oysters week in, week out, and it's up and down, you're better off going for just mid-level consistency. When you're talking about supply chains, into other markets, product travels a long way, long communication lines, all that sort of stuff. That just doesn't handle surprises. So avoid surprises. We don't want to, like here on my screen left, I don't know what side of your screen it is, but we've had this in the past where we've opened up some oysters and they've just spawned, and so it's all translucent. What are we meant to do about that? And then on the right here, you've got some pictures of different sized oysters. That just doesn't suit export markets. It's more about consistency. Then I think this is certainly something that Lynn really finished with strongly. Really be clear on what your objectives are. And whether you're a brand builder or you want to go volume, there's options for going volume, the buffets and things like that, but you're going to have to squeeze down on price. Brand, you have to invest in developing that in whatever the way that is. Might be going to the market visits, or working with some influencers, or taking content, or building a nice brand. But really be clear on what your objective is there, because you can't go in just thinking I'm just going to build a brand, because as Lynn said, there's 50 brands in China, and it takes a lot of work to build a brand. It's not easy. Volume's probably a little bit easier to get going, but if you're playing that game, but yeah, the margins are skinnier. So it's really, everyone's different. And my recommendation is, think about some collaboration and sharing some costs with some people. You don't have to do it on your own. The market in China and Asia and Singapore is huge. We don't need, well, definitely, China does not need another 50 Australian oyster brands. It's just not going to work. We need a handful, and, collaboration. That's going to be easy for everybody and be more effective. So that sort of brings to the end of this presentation. I hope, part one was really about sort of putting your head into the mindset of a Chinese consumer, and then part two was really about just some simple steps, to get going and start thinking about, what your approach is for China or Singapore.
Thank you, James, for the bucket loads of information on how to get the Australian oyster to China. I think there's a lot of information to digest for our growers and farmers, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Now, all our speakers have completed their presentation, and I would like to invite my colleague, Anthony Jamie, to chair the 15-minute Q&A section and close this workshop. Anthony,
thanks,
please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Thanks for the speakers. Certainly a lot of information there to take in. There are a few questions in the chat, I think. One of them was when they asked about if it's chilled. If you say chilled, do you mean half shell? I think from the comments, it sounds like all the oysters that arrive are in shell. Just for Lynn and Kenneth, is that right? Do you have any oysters that are imported shucked, or are they all unshucked?
Well, me in China, we never import, for my company, we never just like import a half shell or dead oysters. We only do the fresh oysters. And we also don't do the frozen oysters. I remember like 4 years ago, we are not allowed to import frozen oysters. Now I see some like New Zealand or Japanese like frozen oysters. But still, for the frozen, normally people will use for for barbecue with the garlic sauce, hot, spicy sauce, and the added value is not really good. So it's really sometimes it's in some very cheap barbecue shop. So we only do the fine food, or we only do the live one.
Yeah, yeah, and Kenneth, I think I noticed the Japanese frozen oysters are actually frozen whole. Is that correct?
Yes, they're frozen whole, and for the live ones, Singapore imports everything as a whole as well.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a peak demand, a peak time of demand, or is it spread throughout the year?
Lynn?
You mean the peak demand? The demand is like our quiet season is the after Chinese New Year. Normally it will be February, March, and April. Since the weather become hot, people like the chill food. Even though I said the quantity is not really stable, but the people like the. And also for the Australian, because you are on the another half of the planet, our season is different. So that means during the summer, like now, we are promoting more like Moana oysters from New Zealand. We promote a lot because now it's the winter in Australia and New Zealand. The quality will be much better than our north side. So the peak time will be the summertime, and also near the Christmas, because a lot of Western restaurants, the business during the time is super good. So demand is the real peak time. I think is about the December. We have a lot of 10 to 15 tons per flight normally.
Right, and whereas for Singapore, our weather is consistent throughout the year, so we only have micro peaks during festive periods. So the weekend before a major holiday, there'll certainly be peak. Then beyond that, it's actually rather consistent. I mean, consistent in a good way, actually. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Thank you for that. So that is certainly the point there that consistency of supply is very, very important. I think you've answered any other questions. Does anybody else on the line have any specific questions? Here we go. Here's one. How has e-trade been implemented? So I think that's about trying to streamline documentation. Any comments? I think we've lost Kenneth. Handling rock oysters. So there's a question here, Lynn and Kenneth. I think I spoke previously about the shelf life of Sydney rock oysters and how they have a much longer shelf life and can handle higher temperatures. I think there was a comment there, Lynn, about that if you have 1 day delay, that there'll be a compromise in freshness and in a high mortality rate of live oysters. So I think the question is, are you aware that with Sydney rock oysters, the extra day will not make an appreciable difference?
For me, I mean, the different temperature, I don't know, because in my companies, our warehouse temperature for the live oysters is 2 to 8 degrees. And our air fleet, when we receive the container, is a cotton, like a big cotton box within the poly inside. And then is with the ice pack and also the packed oysters. We test the temperature. Normally, when we receive the oysters, the temperature is under 10 degrees, which at this moment, our mortality rate is acceptable, around 5%.
Mm. And what's the length of shelf life that you're getting?
Normally, actually, according to the regulations, and the oysters is live like lobsters, so they don't really have a straight line about like the shelf life. But we will suggest our clients and consume the oysters within 7 days once they receive it, because even the oysters is not dead, and after 7 days the flavor is dropping and the freshness is dropping, so it's not good for the brand and not for the good for the the product. So because we have 2 or 3 flights per week, so normally we will clear our stock before the new arrival. So normally my like clients, they only like you need to consider about 2 or 3 days, and like the order the oysters from us is okay. So 7 days means that the restaurant goes not really good. We're going to a very bad circles. You know, the fresh the oysters taste not good. People don't want to come, and then it's bad. They don't want to order, and then it's like a very bad like a circle. Then that means this restaurant is not good for oysters.
Okay. So if there was an oyster that had could last longer, that would be an advantage.
So what?
I was just saying that the Sydney Rock oysters will last a fair bit longer than the other oysters without going bad. So.
Yeah, maybe, but just like we are not sure, we are not really tasted. You know, in the end, you know, your products will tell the story. People, I can tell my clients that you can keep our rock oysters for 10 days or 15 days. But I don't know, but maybe after 15 days, most of the customers, they feel like it's no good. They will come back and buy again. So we don't know. Still, for the live things, we want to consume it as soon as possible. We don't really want to like wait for 10 days and 15 days to sell them, right?
Yeah. There's one more question for you, Lynn, while I have you about Moana month. And they said, is there a potential to focus on Australian oysters for a certain month?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, we are the exclusive like agency of Moana brand now in China, and also the Moana, they have the marketing budget. Also the New Zealand the trading agency, they have the budget. So and also during the summertime, and the Moana oysters will be presented much better than maybe from the north, more stable and more meaty. So now, of course, if some Australian oysters you have the plan and you want to do with us, work with us, of course we can arrange. Not maybe Australian oysters week or month, doesn't matter, but depends on like how we do that, and yeah. But we are willing to, if we really find some serious suppliers and they also want to work with us, we will plan about that.
Yeah, and so I'm hearing it's about suppliers contacting you and negotiating how they're going to present their product. Yeah. Is Duncan still on the line? Oh yeah, there is. There's a question about the figures that you put up for oyster export to China. We're just saying, does that include Hong Kong, or would Hong Kong be separate to that?
That was purely oysters that have been declared for import directly into China. So Hong Kong would be reported separately. And Hong Kong, I think if I saw the question, Hong Kong does have separate arrangements in terms of import requirements that are different from China. So yeah, again, that type of information you will be able to see in that MyCore database that will clearly outline what are the specific import requirements for Hong Kong as a separate entry point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think there's just a final question, probably for Lynn and Kenneth, about they're asking do they see potential for Sydney Rock oysters to be marketed as a gourmet option similar to the Bellon? Kenneth, do you want to start?
Okay. Yeah. So similar to question, is it worth building a brand around uniqueness of the species? Yes, certainly yes. But provided that there's a marked difference in terms of quality, because there's so many products coming into Singapore now, it's really easy to compare. So regardless of how good the marketing is, I mean, people can compare the difference. If there's a difference, it's certainly worth branding it. Otherwise, you know, it's not really you know, to worth the effort really. Yeah. Okay, and just now there was a question about the flights. So for Singapore, I think it's likewise. We do have a chilled holdings area. So all the products that arrives, the temperature consistency are always good, and most of all the importers in Singapore have chilled trucks. So the cold chain is maintained across, and most of the distributors do not have live tanks. The live tanks are really more for marketing and showing and for sales purpose rather than storage and distribution. Normally we'll bring things in, we'll try to clear it within the weekend, and fresh goods will come in at least twice a week.
Okay, and just before I leave, do you put oysters into wet storage tanks, into water when they come in?
No, that's what I'm trying to say. No, we don't. Okay. So the live tanks are really more for show, more for on the final sales end. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we are doing the same because you know, we want to have the, you know, make the oysters tasteable and have the difference. If we put it in the same tank, like you are branding like a bottle the 10 brand of wines from same tank, there's no star can tell in the end, right?
Yeah, yeah, okay, and that's good. Look, I think we've got two. Thank you very much for answering those questions. I think we're out of time now. Actually, 10 minutes behind schedule, so we'll just finish up. There should be 2 quick questions that will come up on people's screens very soon. There they are. They should be up now. If you could just answer those very quickly for us. There's just the 2 yes or no questions. It should only take a moment. And finally, just to finish up while you're answering those questions, if any growers wish to have a one-on-one business match up with either GR Refined Foods or the seafood company, or if they could just contact, I'm happy for you to contact myself or Helen, who's circulated the meeting invite. Please contact us and we'll swap details and help you make contact.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and we really wish you to take time out from your busy schedule to join us, and we're hopefully to see you next time and to explore the export journey with you.